Are you on the fence about starting a company? Do you feel stuck? Do you feel lost? You're like 80% committed, but even though you hate your corporate job, you're still holding on to it because you're scared to make the leap perhaps. In this video, I want to encourage you guys to take the leap if you're someone that feels like you're an entrepreneur. If you're someone that's interested in starting your own thing, you're tired of it being a side gig, you've stopped and started and gaslighted yourself so many times and you're ready to make the jump. I hope this is a motivational video for you. I want to talk to you guys about something that I had happen on a coaching call earlier this week. And this has happened with a lot of my friends too. So I'm making this video because this is a consistent theme that I've seen. So most people don't realize this, but all forms of making money, all forms of bringing in income require faith. What does that mean? Why am I saying that? Am I going like guru, spiritual, whatever? Like, not really. So employees have no idea when their paycheck will stop coming, but they have faith that it won't. And obviously we're seeing mass layoffs and all this other stuff go on. And so like sometimes that the bottom falls out of that, right? Entrepreneurs have no idea where the money will come from, but they have faith that it'll come. And a lot of times 90% of startups fail, right? So both require faith, both require taking a leap of faith. So in this coaching call yesterday, I was talking to this person. We were going through and talking through some of their blockers and the challenges that they had. And they were uncertain if they were ready to make the leap. They were kind of committed, but they had started and stopped a bunch of times in the past, and they didn't want to make the same mistake. And it seemed like very much disruption follows intention, right? It's like they intended to start a company, and then someone would get sick, something would happen, all these things would come up in their life. And so they felt like there was not as much certainty going into the entrepreneurial route versus staying in their corporate job. And we just talked through that. I'm like, well, how many people do you know or friends do you know have been affected by layoffs, and what does that look like? And we started talking about how, employees are abstracted. You're a level removed from what's going on in the day-to-day, right? As a founder, as a CEO, as a C-level exec, you know how much, what the P&L is, what's in the bank, the roles, all this stuff. But as an employee, you don't necessarily always see the same level of that. And so it's kind of this case of ignorance being bliss when you're an employee, because you don't know if you're going to get cut or if you're not going to get cut, if the fundraising is X, but it ends up being Y. What does that mean for you, right? And so again, like both scenarios of being an employee or being an entrepreneur, they require faith. So this is like a theme that I keep bringing up, and I think it's pretty powerful. I think so many things in life are a fear exchange, and where we landed on yesterday and what she said was profound for her when we were talking through this issue was like, I told her, I'm like, you should be more afraid of missing out on serving the people you were put here to serve than her worst case scenario. And in her case, her worst case scenario is like she has a certain amount of runway, which is pretty extensive. I think she had a partner that was also bringing money in. She had a couple of different cushions. Now she does have a 2-year-old, and there were some other things going on that could make it more stressful and feel like more weight and more importance behind like getting it right the first time. But everything is a fear exchange. It's like being afraid of losing stability versus like doing the thing that you were put here to do. For me, I am afraid of making these videos every time. Like I hate getting on here, and especially when I have like, if you go back a couple, I like shaved an eyebrow off, I like had stuff on my face, whatever, like, but I show up because I'm more afraid of like missing out on the opportunity to hopefully help somebody and impact somebody's life than my ego and whatever's going on inside my head, right? I'm also terrified of going back to work at a corporate job where I'm going to like be a walking zombie like so many people and hate my life and like literally live for the weekend and like anesthetize my depression in some form of drugs or alcohol. Like I don't want to do that. Like I have zero desire to go back to doing that. And I understand that's not for everybody. Like there need to be people that are entrepreneurs. There need to be people that are employees. But for me, this is how I feel. And so it's a fear exchange. I would rather have the uncertainty of like not, going really close to the end of my runway and trying to figure this thing out versus going back to work for somebody else. And so I think being aware of the fear exchange is really powerful for her particularly. It really hit her when I said you should be more afraid of missing out on serving the people that you were put here to serve. And I'll talk about that at the very end. But what is actually the worst case scenario? That's a question that I would ask you is like, what's your actual worst case scenario? Because oftentimes, and Lilo Hormozi says this so well, that fear is a mile wide, but it's an inch deep. And so you're afraid of this thing that looks so scary and so big, and you step in and it's a puddle. So I would evaluate your actual worst case scenario. There's another story I wanted to share with you guys, which is that a friend of mine recently, actually this past week, was having some car trouble and missed going to work, went to work late, and got yelled at. And this was funny to me because just recently, the company had they lost power, they lost electricity, they lost power, right? And so they were closed for that day. And it's funny how it's like when you're an employee, it's a one-way street. You can kind of get in trouble or whatever for showing up a little bit late because you had car trouble. But if the company loses power or whatever, they don't have to pay you that day. They can close and there's no repercussions for you as an employee. It just is what it is, as an hourly worker anyway, right? And so it's challenging to be an employee. It's challenging to be an entrepreneur. They're both hard. They're just different types of hard. So all forms of income have uncertainty. When you're an employee, when you're a entrepreneur, there's always some level of risk and uncertainty. I think when you're an employee, the risk is abstracted. And so my encouragement and my purpose in making this video is if you are an entrepreneur and that is your calling, you should take the leap. And I want to revisit what I was saying earlier about being more afraid of missing out on serving the people you were put here to serve. You're not going to be here forever. They're not going to be here forever. And I know you're probably thinking what do I have to give, whatever. You are a fingerprint, a thumbprint, like your experience, where you lived, your friends, the things that you believe, all of those things that shape the decisions you make, the things that you say, what comes out of you, the way that you're creative, all of that, it's setting you up to speak to a certain person, a certain group of people in a very specific way with a very specific context. And so I can't serve them, somebody else can't serve them. And then you have the whole time factor, right? I can't go back, 50 years ago and serve the people that some other entrepreneur is supposed to serve. So if you're called to do this, you should just think twice about it because both involve risk, both require having faith, and I think you should take the leap if you're feeling that tug on your heart. I hope this video helps, and I'll see you in the next one.